Welcome to the Strategic Veteran, where we chart the course from service to civilian triumph. I'm Adam Peters, a veteran, entrepreneur, and your fellow navigator in the quest for a life of impact and fulfillment. My mission is simple: to empower you with the tools and stories that turn challenge into opportunity. Having walked the path from active duty to where I stand now, I understand the search for purpose that comes with hanging up the uniform. It's a path I've walked, with its trials, its tribulations, and its victories, and it's a journey we're on together. This podcast is more than just conversation. It's a beacon for those seeking to redefine our missions through entrepreneurship. It's about igniting the entrepreneurial spirit that lives within us, the spirit that compels us to create, lead, and make our mark on the world. Here we connect with veterans who have built businesses, sparked change, and found their purpose in the marketplace of ideas. They're not just surviving, they're thriving. They've transformed their service into startups, their experiences into enterprises, and they're proof that you can too. So whether you're scribbling business plans on napkins or stepping into the arena of innovation, remember, you're not alone. You're in good company. So let's explore these stories of transformation and take the first steps together on our path to purpose. Let's begin. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Strategic Veteran. I'm your host, Adam Peters, and today we're honored to have Brandon Jenkins with us, a distinguished officer in the United States Navy with over 21 years of dedicated service, currently serving as a military professor of leader development at the U.S. Naval War College. Brandon has a rich background in aviation, having flown the SH-60B and the MH-60R Seahawk helicopters, and has held key positions on the Nimitz carrier at U.S. SOCOM. Brandon's journey is a testament to the power of teamwork, resilience, and continual growth. From his early days inspired by the camaraderie of sports to leading high-stakes operations, Brandon has consistently demonstrated an unwavering commitment to excellence. His transition from active duty to entrepreneurship is fueled by his core values of vision, empowerment, and life authorship, guiding others to uncover their best selves through his innovative coaching programs at Tier 1 Coaching. Today, Brandon will share his profound insights on leadership, the pivotal moments that shaped his career, and how he's helping others navigate their own transitions. Join us as we explore the journey of Commander Brandon Jenkins, a true embodiment of what it means to be a strategic veteran, leveraging his experiences to inspire and empower the next generation of leaders. Brandon, brother, thank you so much for your time on this beautiful Saturday morning. I really appreciate you being here to have a conversation.
Wow, Adam. I don't know if I deserve that introduction or not. All that stuff, you made it sound, I think, maybe a lot bigger and better than it is.
I mean, I disagree, man. I think the whole thing is to give you the credit that you're due for the things that you've accomplished in your life. And I think it's important for the audience to know who you are, what you're capable of, and where you're going. And so I just want to do your due diligence.
Well, thanks, brother. I appreciate you doing that for me. And thanks for having me on. Strategic veteran, dude. I love what you're doing. I love your mission. Super valuable, helping veterans kind of understand that, the only golden path is the one that they carve for themselves, right?
Yeah, man. And it's such a beautiful thing. And I can't wait to talk to you about your philosophies on that and what you're doing to help veterans. But let's start at the beginning, man. Tell us kind of where you grew up, how growing up was for you, and kind of what inspired you to join the Navy.
Well, I grew up in a small town in Western Maryland, Cumberland. Small town. When I was growing up, about 20 to 25,000 people. It's actually shrunk even more, kind of being in the Appalachian foothills there in Western Maryland. Not a lot of industry there. And so, I graduated high school in 99. So since I've left, it's kind of shrunk a little bit. So grew up playing sports. Didn't have a dad, never met my dad. And so got onto the sports teams, and those became kind of my brothers, my sisters, and my coaches were kind of almost like father figures all growing up. And so I just developed this love for team. And I saw the power of having a group of people that were kind of together for a common mission, a common purpose. And we all had our roles to play, the things we were expected to do. And if we did those and we came together, then we would achieve the mission. And so you could probably see how that love of the team sport then kind of led me to seek out something like the military as the next step after high school.
Yeah, that's great, man. So, first question, why the Navy? Second question, did you always know you wanted to be a naval aviator?
Oh man, so why the Navy? My mom was a Navy vet. She was a hospital corpsman when she was still in.
Best
And I
medics on
just
the planet, by
remember
the way.
what's that?
Best medics on the planet, by the way.
Yeah,
You'll never
yeah, right.
convince me otherwise.
Yeah. Um, she we just had a conversation one day. I think I was 10 or 11 years old, so I was pretty young. And she actually brought up the Naval Academy. I had never considered that. I was 10, 11 years old. And so, man, the conversations about college and what I was going to do after, I mean, was I even in high school at 10 or 11? I think I'm still in middle
No,
school at
yeah, you're
that point.
definitely in middle school.
So, um, I don't know. I wasn't really thinking that at all. And she brought that up, I guess, based on her Navy experience, and maybe she had experience with Naval Academy grads. I have no idea really, but she brought that up and made me aware of it. And so it kind of just planted a seed that, oh, well, that might be an option. Because at that point I was middle school, right? But I was thinking, I want to go to college after high school. But I didn't know anything about service academies. So she turned me on to that. And that's probably why Navy, it just, her Navy experience and plug in the Naval Academy for me. And then naval aviator, no, I didn't always want to be a naval aviator. It wasn't one of those things where, childhood dream is to fly and I'm going to grow up and now I'm realizing my childhood dream. It really wasn't like that at all. Um, in fact, I got to the Naval Academy and naval aviation wasn't my top choice, I don't think, until maybe my junior year there. Um, it was an option, but it was just one of the other options there that I was considering for what I would do after graduation. So, yeah, so no, it wasn't a childhood dream, and really just developed while I was at the Naval Academy.
Oh man, it was my childhood dream. I remember having all the little we're almost the same age. So you graduated when I was coming into high school as a freshman. I very distinctly remember that. I imagine your graduation song was that Vitamin C song, the year 2000 or whatever. You know what I'm talking about? I definitely remember some of that from when I was a freshman in high school. But so you're you're at Annapolis, you're going through the service academy, and now 9/11 happens. And so talk about how that inspired your journey through the rest of your service academy. Cause I figure you probably would have been a sophomore or junior at that point.
Yeah, yeah, 2001. So, I graduated in '03. So that was fall of one. So I would have been a junior.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did that affect you, and how did that maybe push you into aviation a little bit, since that's going into your junior year? And kind of what are you thinking? Like, what are your feelings? Are you well aware of what your career is going to look like at this point? I mean, I think a lot of us probably weren't, because nobody fathomed that the war would drag on for 21 years. But I remember being a sophomore in high school and had started considering the Army. I hadn't signed anything yet. I didn't do that till my junior year, but I remember like really feeling called to serve after that. Is that kind of similar feelings you had?
Well, since I was already at the academy, it wasn't a matter of making a decision as to whether or not I would serve, right? I knew that I was going to graduate and be commissioned. Man, I remember I was in the McDonough gym at the Naval Academy. I was working out and saw on the television there in the gym, super nice gym there at the academy, and just saw it all playing out on TV. So one of those moments in your life where I will always remember where I was when 9/11 happened. Um, so what did it, as far as aviation, I don't know that it influenced my decision to go aviation. I think by the time I hit my junior year, of all the options, I think I had narrowed it down to, I think I want to be a pilot. Um, and so I don't know that influenced that aspect, but it's certainly I'm already patriotic, right? I'm already feeling the call to serve. And I think what that did is just kind of solidified that and really made me aware of what I was signing up to do. When I graduated, I knew that it was going to be different than when I went to the academy, which was relatively peaceful, right? And we didn't have that going on in '99.
For sure. Yeah. And so with aviation and your decision to, finally pick a major or a career path, rather, how did it become, flying the Seahawks? Because, the Navy has fighters also. I, like you, so I am a pilot, I'm a commercial pilot, a fixed wing. I wanted to fly helicopters when I got out of the Army. I just couldn't find a school that would take the GI Bill. There's not a lot of Part 141 schools out there that teach helicopters, mainly because what I learned about helicopters is in the civilian world, you have to know somebody to get a good job that pays you money. You have to spend a lot of money to get rated in each specific helicopter with a specific number of hours to meet the insurance requirements so that you can fly that legally. And I was just like, no, I'm going fixed wing. Like, see ya. So how did you get a choice, or did they like, hey, dude, you're in the Navy now and you're going to fly these. You don't get a choice.
So you go to flight school, and everybody starts off flying a fixed wing aircraft in flight school. For me, at that time, it was the T-34 single engine prop, and you get all your basic initial foundational aviation flying in that aircraft. And then once you finish that phase based on your grades, so based on your grades and your desire, you put in your wish list. And then, so wish list for me was jets. I wanted to fly jets, followed by helicopters, and followed by the P3. At the time was the P3, now is the P8. And I tell you, I started not really knowing what I wanted to fly, and then we fly some aerobatic during that first phase. We fly some aerobatic flights, and just flying those aerobatics, I was like, this is so cool. Even if I was a civilian pilot, when else in my life would I have the opportunity to try to fly an F-18, right? And so I wanted to go F-18. So wasn't in the cards. I got helicopters and absolutely loved the helicopter community. The people, mainly the people that I've met throughout my career and worked with. And I think that's probably true with anything, right? It's the people that you work with, the people on your team. Back to the team theme again. It almost doesn't matter what you're doing. I think that's what makes or breaks it, the people. But anyway, you finish primary, and then whatever aircraft you select, platform, then you go to the next advanced phase of flight school. So for me, that was back to Pensacola, Milton, actually, and flying helicopters. And then that's, once you finish there, you get winged, and then you go out to the fleet, and you go to the fleet replacement squadron for whatever aircraft you're going to actually fly operationally, which for me at the time was the SH-60 Bravo Seahawk.
That's a cool helicopter. I've been on a couple of them over my travels, and they're massive. They're awesome. I think they're heavy lift helicopters, right?
They're not quite. They're not like the 53s. The 53s are the big guys, but they're about 23,000 pounds ish, right? And so not huge, but dual engine, pretty powerful. The dual engine provides good redundancy. I mean, you can fly them single engine if you had to. We practice that all the time. So,
of course, yeah. It's aviation. You practice all the time.
Yeah.
So this is a fun conversation for me because I don't often get to have conversations with other pilots since I've left kind of the aviation industry, if you will. But I went to flight school. Obviously, I flew fixed wing. I was pretty turned off about flying, just with the whole training pipeline and what you have to do to actually get there to do what, to me, flying was about, point A to point B fastest route possible, right? That's very much not the reality in flight school. It's a whole lot of going out into the box, the practice area, and doing maneuvers all the time, over and over and over, and a little trainer, and it gets boring until you get to like CFI and spin training. And then, if you have a cool instructor who's aerobatic certified, he'll take you up and do some really cool maneuvers. So I relate to that a ton. But one of the things that really interested me was we had in my flight school, we had a lot of guys getting out of the Army because I was at JBLM, coming from helicopters and going to learn how to fly fixed wing. And one of the biggest transitions that they said was so hard for them was maintaining glide path on like an ILS approach. Did you have any? So I know, when people speak to the transition from helicopters to fixed wing and the differences, I know what that's like and I can relate to that. But what was it like for you learning on the T-34 and then switching to a helicopter? Because I'm still very interested and will in the future go get a helicopter ticket, right? I love something about flying something that physics says shouldn't fly, right? So what was that transition like for you? And kind of speak to like, what did you learn from that about adaptability or your abilities, if you will?
Man, you're asking me to go back a long way and try to remember what it was like to fly fixed wing, which I can do, but it's a little fuzzy. It's a little fuzzy for me now. I remember making that transition to helicopters really, and this might be intuitive to some people, was the hovering. So going from a fixed wing where you get on the runway and then you bring up power. And so then you're starting to pick up speed on the runway and you hit a certain speed, right? And then you can start to take off. Well, with a helicopter, you just can pick right up, right where you're at. And so learning to kind of take off, hover, and then from a hover, set it back down. That's what I remember being the most difficult. Once you are transitioned to forward flight and you're flying at speed, it's very similar. And trying to think back 20 years when I was going through flight school, I can't remember major differences in that. I know there are differences, but I can't really recall them right now. But I do recall the difficulty of trying to learn how to hover. It's like you're trying to. I mean, it's like four-dimensional, right? Up, down, left, right. You can turn on the axis. You can pivot down, and it's
Each one of your
pretty
limbs
wild.
is doing something different and learning how to coordinate them. It's funny because coming from another helicopter guy, that's the same thing that all the helicopter guys I was in flight school with, because I am interested in getting a helicopter ticket. They're like, dude, you're going to be just fine. The hardest part for you is going to be learning how to hover and maybe auto rotation.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's a good point. Auto rotations. Yeah,
Because
you don't glide.
it's completely different in an airplane. Like for example, in a 172, just trim wheel all the way down, pitch for 65, and you're going to go for a long, long way, right? Like it actually tripped me up in my commercial ticket because I was gliding, just I had more altitude than I knew what to do with. So now I'm like circling to kind of get down and make that approach for the emergency landing versus I can imagine auto rotation is probably a little scary the first time you do it.
Oh yeah, and when you go to advanced school in Milton there, and you're flying it was the TH-57, I think. Don't quote me on that, but TH-57 is what I learned on, and I think they may have since changed that. But you actually do a full auto rotation in practice, a full auto rotation all the way down to the ground and land it. So that the first time you do that is wild. And your instructor's in there with you and he simulates by just kind of rolling back to idle. And then it's like, all right, go. And your instructor's making sure that you've made the field already. A good instructor, right? Should be. You've made the field and before they go to idle. But then you're flying and the first time you do that, you're like, oh my gosh, I got to find the field. Or there's the field and you got to get the nose over to keep the speed. And you're a brick. You're falling out of the sky. You're a brick. You're not like I remember in the T-34, the glide that you could just glide and you had so much time to kind of get over to the field and set yourself up. And depending on how high you were, you're almost like flying circles, like you just said, to try to lose the altitude, but not in a helo. I don't know the vertical speed that you're falling out of the sky. I kind of forget that now. Maybe, yeah, I'm not even going to quote anything, but it's fast. It's like a brick. Yeah. So the auto rotation, man, you're falling out of the sky like a brick. You're falling out of the sky like a brick. There's no gliding. There's no glide path. I mean, there's a glide path, but it is
Steep.
real
Yeah, short
short.
and steep.
uh, yeah, short and steep. And the bottom is just a rock, a pull, and a cushion. And um, you hope to have enough turns in that rotor to cushion the landing so it's soft enough that you walk away from it.
Yeah,
That's about
so
it.
yeah, auto rotation. That's the part I'm not looking forward to about getting a ticket. I always hated the emergency landing stuff too. Like, I understand training it and practicing it, but it's like, man, like, what if something really does happen? Like, that's not going to be great, right? And I was a student, so I'm not making the best decisions, right? And sometimes you get stuck with some not so great instructors that really just don't care because they're on their way out. And then it's like, we could have really been fucked here. Like, looking back at debriefing the flight, if you have a good flight school and you do that, you're like, oof, this is, I should probably keep that in mind for next time. um Talk to us a little bit about your journey flying the 60B and the 60Rs and how those roles kind of challenged and built you up personally and professionally over your career.
Um, well, it starts off at the Fleet Replacement Squadron, which is essentially just flight school again, but this time with the operational aircraft, so the 60 Bravo. And, the flying from a developmental perspective, the flying itself is developmental, but not as much as just the process. The process of moving through flight school, the process of learning PBED, which is planning, briefing, then executing, and then debriefing. That is in itself developmental, and it's very growth oriented. It's very um, learning organization oriented, meaning you're planning something out, you're going to execute it, and then you're going to take those lessons learned immediately. You're going to talk about them, and then you're going to ask yourself, how quickly can I learn this again? Or how can I apply this next time to do better? And so you're creating this continuous learning loop, and you're learning how to do that in flight school. And so from the beginning of flight school and then into the Bravo, right? These are the things that you're learning that are going to help you be a better pilot, but also develop you and help you to be a better just uh,
I
service
love
member.
I love that, man,
Help you.
because thinking back to all the things I learned in flight school, particularly when you're trying to become a CFI, I can look back now, and I think a week or so ago you had a comment, and then we were back and forth in the comments on LinkedIn, and I used the decide model from aviation as a way to kind of point out some similarities in business. And it's like, man, if you really look at these principles that they're teaching you in the PHAC and all of that, it's like you can apply this to a lot of things. Like, it's very well thought out and very well researched, and it's not presented in a digestible manner is kind of my problem with it, right? The PHAC is one of the most boring reads that you're ever going to have. The FAA really loves to get weird with their language and kind of distort their words and try and make them mean something else. So you have to read between the lines. But if you take it for what it is at its core, I can absolutely see what you're talking about with, it's this loop that you're constantly in. And I think I noticed that in my career with the aviation guys as well. They always seem to be just better people. I don't know. It was weird. So what was what is the primary mission set of the 60 B and R, and where are you going? What are you doing over the course of your career? I know there's probably some things that you can't talk about, but give us a highlight reel of, kind of where you've been, what you've done, and how that affected you.
Yeah, the primary mission of the Bravo and Romeo is anti-submarine warfare, anti-surface warfare. Surface being just ships out on the surface of the ocean. Those are the two primary missions of my aircraft. My first tour, operational tour, I did two deployments. One deployment was on a frigate. So in my community, I was in the HSL then HSM community. So, 2 deployments, my first operational tour. The first, we went down to, we were in South America, in the Caribbean, really in the Caribbean, and then off the coast of South America, and just doing some counter drug ops down there. And actually, we got to do some hurricane relief effort operations during that tour where we flew in. We were parked off the coast of Nicaragua. I think it was Hurricane Felix. I forget the year, 2005 or six, I think. And we would fly into, yeah, this was down in Nicaragua. Um, so I think it was Hurricane Felix. It hit this Hurricane Felix. It didn't hit the U.S. It went into Nicaragua, and because we were down there, we flew in and we're just doing humanitarian ops, taking people water, medicine, rice, and that was the first deployment I had. It was so rewarding to know that I was going in there and helping people out who had just gone through this major hurricane. I forget what category it was, but a major hurricane. And first deployment, wasn't an aircraft commander yet, but we were getting to go in and do confined area landings, just like in trees all around us, or like one wheel landings where we're kind of hovering, but we got one wheel down and we're kicking out supplies, and like just the first time I've ever done any of that was the coolest thing ever. Um, so
It sounds cool, man. I always liked watching the Chinooks when I was at JBLM. They had this like little hill inside the fence, kind of off to the side end, the south end of the runway, and they would just like drop ramp and like hover their ramp on this hill and like let dudes get off, kind of like an assault. And I was like, man, that's skill right there. Like that's incredible because you have no idea, right? You can't see back there. You're really relying on your instruments, right? And probably, I guess, one of the guys back on the ramp to tell you.
yeah, we have air crew. We don't have a ramp, but we have air crewmen in the back, and they open up the side of the cabin door, and they can look out and help you and see kind of what's underneath the aircraft, what's behind you. They're your eyes back there. We have little like side view mirrors, which are we can see a little bit back there, but no detail, like not a ton of detail. It's hard to see. So that's something else that I learned. Right, as a helicopter pilot, it's a crew. And so developmentally, what have we learned so far? We've learned a way to create a continuous feedback loop with the plan, brief, execute, debrief. How fast can we incorporate it again? And now we're learning crew concept. So again, it goes back to that team concept that was so important to me growing up. And now as a helicopter pilot, it's a crew concept. So it's multi-piloted. So we always have two pilots, and then in the back, we have at least one air crewman, sometimes two air crewmen, depending on whatever the mission is that we're flying. And so we're always having to learn how to work together. Crew resource management is huge in aviation and certainly in naval aviation, and just learning to work effectively as a crew, right? Learning assertiveness and communication, um, and just kind of what your role is, kind of like we talked about on the sports teams, right? What's your role in the aircraft? And here's the mission. Here's the role you need to play. We all need to play our role in this aircraft to get the aircraft to do what we need to do for the mission, right? So it's just constantly then all of my flight missions, it's a team concept. So that's another developmental part of being a helicopter pilot, I think. I feel like we went off on a tangent, or I went off on a tangent. So just kind of bring me back. Like, where was I?
No, man, it's great because you're talking about, right, like you're noticing, okay, so you didn't have your dad in your life, and so your coaches and the guys you were around playing sports, it was that team mentality. And I can imagine it was probably the same when you got to Annapolis and you're going through, the service academy into the Navy, and then you get to your I forget what you called it, but the replacement squadron, and same thing, right? Like you're learning it's a two pilot aircraft and you have three crew in the back, and you all have to work together to fly this death machine and do what you're supposed to do. And I think I didn't have the self-awareness to understand all of the things that I was learning as tools, and the camaraderie and the teamwork, and how you can lean on that as a community to get better, in your personal, when I was in my career, right? But it sounds like you've always kind of been aware of, how good that sense of community is and what that does to bring you up. And I think it's awesome that you're talking about that, because I haven't had anybody on the show yet actually point this out. So I'm getting a lesson from you right now, and I think it's a powerful lesson.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that, Adam. I have to tell you though, at that part of my career, when I'm just starting out, I didn't have the clarity that I'm talking about it now as if those lessons were obvious back then. But when I was just starting out, I didn't really have that clarity. It was more, this just feels right. Like I'm attracted to this. I've played sports all my life. Now I'm attracted to continuing to do this at the Naval Academy. I'm attracted to aviation. But in the moments, I was just kind of going through it, and I was in the pipeline, in the training pipeline, going through the training, working with the other flight school students, the other pilots and air crew, and then getting to the squadron. So all along, I'm learning. But I think if you would have asked me back then to pull out, like, what is it that resonates with me so much, or how is this developmental? I don't think I would have been able to articulate it like I've articulated it here. I think that that's coming from just, 20 years, and then being a very reflective and introspective person, in somebody who really in the last 5 years has started to embrace, like, I have a coach that I work with, my accountability group I was talking about earlier. Um, really helps you to become more aware and intentional about this stuff. Um, and I don't know if we'll get into it a little later, but it's the golden path fallacy. Maybe we'll save
Oh,
that for
we're
later. I don't
definitely
know.
going to get into that. We're going to get into that for sure. And I appreciate the candidness from you, because hearing you explain it the first time, and then hearing you walk it back and be like, this is a result of the work that I've done on myself over 20 years, and particularly really hard in the last 5 years, right? But you can go back and look at those parts of your career and see the value there, right? Whereas, neither one of us, I guess, probably I couldn't have told you that and articulated it the way that you did when I was, in the infantry either, right? So I think that's important. And so let's how long are you still flying, or you kind of, officers kind of age or rank out of that, correct? You kind of step away from actually being a pilot and start commanding pilots, right?
Well, so in naval aviation, even when you're the CO, the commanding officer of the squadron, you're still flying. So my last operational tour, I was the commanding officer of a HSM 46 out of Jacksonville, Florida. And so that tour, I was still flying at this point, the MH-60 Romeo. So I made a transition of platform, still a Seahawk, still flies basically the same. It's a little bit heavier, still has the same mission. But I made that transition in my department head tour. So back in 2014, 13 or 14 timeframe. But anyway, as the CO, you're still flying. But then I turned over command. And when I left that command, I came up to the War College. I was a student for a year before now I'm a military professor of leader development there at the college. So now I'm not flying. So that last tour as a CO was my last flying tour. I am not flying in this tour. There are opportunities for post command to continue to fly. It just depends on whether or not you're given that opportunity to continue flying, which would mean, it basically means that you get another command position at the 06 level, and you can go back and then command, be the commodore of all the squadrons, or you could even be an operational commander of the air wing. In which case, both of those positions you could still continue to fly even as an 06. And then after that, there's less and less, like you said. yeah, there's less and less opportunities to continue flying.
I just noticed that from being in the Army. I very much wanted to be. I put in a warrant packet twice, and both times got denied because I was hopeful that PRK would be something that I could go get and then get picked up to go fly. I really wanted to fly the Kiowas before they phased them out. I thought for me, the opportunity to fly a Kiowa, because it has no advanced avionics, it's literally all pilot, and it was cool because it's the only helicopter that I know of at the time that was allowed to be flown single pilot. And so I always thought that that was kind of a cool element. There's just something, I always liked solo flights when I was going through flight school. It was like, all that pressure on you to really test your knowledge and understand that you did learn how to do this and then build that confidence in yourself. I probably didn't realize it at the time, but definitely realize it now. So talk about your time in the operational squadrons on the Nimitz and the challenging yet rewarding aspects of those experiences. Do you have any that kind of stand out that really tested you?
Well, yes. I think that for me, it's a cumulative effect of all the deployments. So 2 deployments my first tour, and then I actually went and was an instructor pilot at the Fleet Replacement Squadron after that tour. So I spent 3 years training new pilots in the 60 Bravo. Then after that, that's when I went to the Nimitz. After that, I actually wasn't flying when I was on the Nimitz. I went out to the Nimitz to be an aircraft launch and recovery officer. So if you
And what
watch
does that mean?
Maverick, yeah, if you watch Maverick or Top Gun, right? Either of the Top Guns, I'm the guy in the yellow mock turtleneck on the flight deck who's putting who's shooting the aircraft off. Basically, I'm the safety officer on deck to make sure everything looks good for that final check before I give the thumbs up to launch the jets off the carrier. And
Did you ever were you ever that
that
guy that does that cool pose with the two fingers on one knee, like, hey, bye?
That's the guy. Yeah, that's the guy I was.
Okay,
Yeah, in the yellow shirt.
that's
I'm
awesome,
telling you,
man.
your
Yeah.
audience, yeah, go back and watch Top Gun or Maverick, because Maverick, the intro, it's very similar to the Top Gun intro, and that's the guy in the yellow jersey doing that with the shooting, putting the fingers up like it's a gun or whatever. That's me. So not me in the movie, but the role that I filled. Um, yeah, so that was huge because it's the first time in my career when I'm going to serve a tour not flying. So I get out of the cockpit, I'm not flying, and even though I'm around aviation, which was still so that was still pretty cool. I'm learning complete new skills. So back to developmental, learning new things, challenging my brain to learn new things. And it's the first time that I had been a division officer and had 40 or 50 people before working with me when I was a division officer, but I was able to be in a division on the carrier where I basically doubled that. So it was the first time in my career where I got out of the cockpit, I learned something new, and I had to stretch my leadership um, tool set that I hadn't really had to stretch much outside of the cockpit. Leadership in the cockpit, of course, when you're flying with a crew, and then, like I said, some small opportunities up to that point in the squadrons. But this was the largest kind of test bed that I had gotten up to this point in my career when I was on the aircraft carrier, not flying.
Was that painful for you, or did you embrace the new role and learning a new skill set, or were you kind of upset and you missed flying?
I embraced it. I wanted to learn something new. I wanted to get outside of my comfort zone. Um, and at the time, I this is one of those things where at the time I was thinking like that. I was thinking it's time to kind of get out of the cockpit and try something different. And a lot of that thinking at the time was because of mentors that I had in the Navy who told me it's time to go learn something different and especially try to gain some leadership experience outside of the cockpit because my mentors told me, the higher you want to to go, or the longer you're in, it's the leadership. How can you develop your team? How can you work with a team in or outside the cockpit, right? Eventually you get to the point where the Navy wants me to be able to do that regardless of whether or not I'm flying.
Fair enough. And that's kind of my experience in the Army. However, I was just deployed so much, so the opportunity for professional development to go try new things in the Army and get those next steps to be a better leader. I just didn't. We weren't afforded the opportunity. I was deployed every other year. Getting orders the same day I'm coming home from a deployment, so that I know when I'm leaving for the next one. So, it's awesome that you recognize that and had good mentors that facilitated that for you. And so, did the SOCOM thing come after you were a aircraft launch and recovery officer? And if that's how that went down, what was the process like getting to SOCOM, and what was that job like?
Yeah, so after I was a aircraft launch and recovery officer, we call them shooters on the carrier. I went back to Jacksonville and was a department head in a squadron, actually in HSM 46, the same squadron I ended up commanding. I spent a tour there first as a department head. And then after that department head tour is when I went to SOCOM. And at
Okay, so let's talk
SOCOM, I
about let's
was,
talk about the let's talk about the department head for a minute, because you mentioned to me in booking, the appearance on the show, you had a pivotal moment finishing up your department head tour, and you were at the 13-year mark. And so, how did this period lead to a deeper reflection on your career and your personal values? And if it did at all, how did that play into your decision to go over to SOCOM and take kind of that next level of your career?
man, this is a great question. Um, it was pivotal because I would say, looking back, reflecting back, up until that point in my career, I was just following the path that I thought I was supposed to follow in order to continue to promote in my community and in the Navy. And even the Nimitz job, like I said, I wanted to challenge myself, but it was like mentors who showed me that I needed to challenge myself, and help me come to that realization. And then department head was the next step after that. And so I go back to my department head tour. And then this is the first time in my career that I can say that I started to intentionally reflect on why I was still doing what I was doing. Like, why did I want to continue to take the jobs, continue to climb the ladder, continue to promote, and just it had to be something more than just, well, that's what I'm supposed to do because I'm in the Navy. I'm a helicopter pilot in the Navy. That's what I do. And you hear it all the time, the golden path in the Navy. You hear it all the time. I don't know if it's the same in the Army or not. Um, but
Yeah, I'm sure I'll
we
let you get
golden
through
path.
your description of the golden path, and then I'll tell you kind of what I see the golden path is in the Army, and I think there's going to be a lot of similarities for sure.
Okay. Yeah. So in the Navy, as a Navy helicopter pilot, there's golden path, meaning you do this job, you do well. Then from there, here's, a handful of jobs that'll keep you competitive for promotion, for the next role as a department head. And even as early as that first and second tour, keeping you competitive to one day be a CO, to make O5 and be a CO. So that early, you're shown this handful of, and they'll people talk about the golden path, right? Um, and if you don't take those jobs, no matter how good you do at the other jobs, there's this stigma or belief that, okay, you're not going to be as competitive anymore because you didn't take a job on the golden path. And then you can take that and it'll bleed over into the way you're thinking about other things you're doing. In other words, I'm a department head. So I get in this role, I'm a department head, and I know I need to do well and I want to do well. But I had to finally just ask myself, do I even want to go to the next role? Do I want to be a CO? Because that's the next, in the aviation community, the next role would have been the CO after, I go do a dissociated thing, which is what I did at SOCOM, and we'll get to that. But do I even want to do that? And if I do, why? I mean, do I just want to do it because it's next? Or is there something about all this that I love? And is there something about the opportunities I would have as a CO that resonate with me and what I really want to do? Like, what do I want? And so that was the first time that I just intentionally started to reflect on some of those things. And I remember having conversations with my CO when I was a department head, just telling them, I don't know if I want to be a CO. I'm starting to question this. And so, yeah, it's the first time in my career that I started to really get serious about understanding what I want and what resonated with me and lined up with me. I'll pause there.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting to hear you say that because, even in the Army, I joined in 03. So I got to my first unit October 10th of 2003, very, very shortly after they came home from the invasion. So life for me was very miserable as an enlisted private, but it was very clear to me what the path forward was. They made it clear, like, you're going to be a private for a little bit. You're going to get your E4, and then you're probably going to get picked up to go to Korea as an infantryman. You're going to spend a year in Korea. You're going to immediately have to come back. Hopefully you have your EIB by then, and then you're going to go to Ranger School, because if you ever want to make E7, that's what you've got to do, right? And it's like, man, so it's all laid out for you. That's all you're working towards. And then all of that falls apart probably in 08 or 09 because of the surge, and you're just constantly deploying. And so now there's no golden path forward. It's basically just go to combat as much as you can and you'll get promoted. And so there wasn't any time for self-reflection, because I came in knowing that this is the path forward. So, I got my EIB, and then I want to go to Ranger School because I know that makes you a better leader, or so I thought. And it's not always the case. A lot of times it is the case, but just deploying so much, I didn't get the opportunity to go do something that I wanted to do. In fact, I got stop moved to go on a third deployment with the third ID. And at that point, all I wanted was out of the unit to go experience something new. You know what I mean? So it's really cool to hear that it's kind of the similar for all of us across all branches, no matter what walk of life, or path we're taking. You're an officer, a naval aviator. I was an enlisted infantry guy in the Army, and a lot of similarities there, And so you said you really started doing the self-reflection, and you were questioning wanting to become a commander. So is this now where you go to SOCOM, or did you hire the coach first?
This is where I went to SOCOM. And so even though I was reflecting on what I really wanted, the next expected job to take after a department head, at least when I was a department head, was to go another disassociated tour, so not flying, and to go to a joint command to learn how to work with other services, right, in the joint environment. And so it was like kind of on the golden path, the one that was laid out for me. And then I just made a decision of which joint command, or I put in my wish list, and I wanted to go to SOCOM because I felt that I would resonate with the team atmosphere that's in special operations. I thought it would be very similar to an aviation. And so really that's why I wished for and gratefully got SOCOM. But the fact that I wanted to go joint really was influenced by, again, kind of the golden path and what my mentors were telling me that I should do.
And what did you learn at SOCOM? Was it everything you expected it to be? And did you get that team environment, probably maybe more so than what you were used to in the conventional Navy?
Man, it was great. It was a wonderful experience where I got to I was completely removed from aviation. So not, the first disassociated tour I did, I was still on an aircraft carrier around naval aircraft all the time. This one, I was not. I was in Tampa. I was at the headquarters. I was behind a desk a lot. But not as much, maybe not as much as I just made it sound like. So I get into this environment where now I'm working with retired E9s from the Army and the Air Force, special operations. I'm working, my boss at that point is an '05 active duty Green Beret Ranger, like had all the patches. And so I'm just learning now how to operate on a different team. And now I'm on this team and it's got all these different perspectives. So still team oriented, but outside of the aviation realm. So I'm getting exposed to different ways of doing business, different ways of operating, different ways to think about things. And the caliber of the people I was working with there was just top notch. It was amazing. So honestly, everywhere I've been in the Navy, I've been blessed. The squadrons I've been in, the time at SOCOM, right now where I'm at, like I've worked with just some amazing people. We talked about this earlier, right? It's all about the people, and I've been blessed to really work with some great people everywhere I've been. But yeah, I learned a ton at SOCOM, a ton.
That's so cool to hear your experience at SOCOM and it turning out just kind of the way I think you thought it would go. And so now your time ends at SOCOM and it's time to take command, right? Like you don't have a choice at this point. If you're going to move forward in the Navy, you have to be a commander, correct?
Well, at this point, you can be a lieutenant commander, and unless something's changed, you could still make it to 20 and retire. But so at this stage, soon after I got to SOCOM, I had screened for '05 and in screened to be. I knew that I was selected to be a CO, so I knew that, and that was at the beginning. So, and I had a 2-year tour at SOCOM, so I had 2 years to kind of think about it and do my job at SOCOM, and then just kind of more reflection on what it would be like to be a CO and what I needed to do to prepare myself for that role. Um, and so then after SOCOM, I go back then through the Navy puts prospective commanding officers through a pipeline where we get some naval leadership and ethics course. We get some aviation command training. And then as a pilot, then I had to go back through the fleet replacement squadron and just get all my currencies back in the helicopter.
Yeah, because 2 years
And
away from
so,
flying is
yeah,
it's a big deal.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. So that's what kind of
So during
after SOCOM, and that's
yeah,
about a year.
right. So you're in this pipeline for a year, getting the skills you need to take command, and getting currency back on the aircraft, and getting your wits about you back in the aircraft. I've taken several breaks in my flying career. My first break was 2 years between finishing commercial and then attempting to go back to CFI. And it was hard to get back in the airplane. It's not like you forget, but you're really rusty and your reaction time's not the same. And the way you see the approach or whatever, it takes a little bit of getting used to. And so you're doing all this for a year. At what point did you realize for you needed to reach out and hire a coach so that you could be the best commander that you could be?
Yeah, great question. Um, so as I mentioned, pretty introspective person, pretty reflective. And so I was starting to shape my ideas of who I was and what I valued and what was really important to me about our mission and what we were doing. So I get through the pipeline. I become the executive officer, so the second in command at the squadron. Um, in the naval aviation, we fleet up, meaning we start as the XO, and then after about a year and a half, we change command and we become the commanding officer. So when I got to the squadron as the executive officer, it was about halfway to 3/4 of the way through that experience of being the executive officer that I decided to hire a coach. Um, and what the decision, so reflective, introspective, but a lot of times that stuff's just kind of floating around in your head. Like you have a pretty good idea of who you are, a good sense of core values, etc. But before I took command, it was just incredibly important to me that I was crystal clear on all of that. What do I believe in? What are my core values? What are my passions? What are my skills? What's my purpose and cause? Like, what am I uniquely designed to do and bring to this command that I'm about to have this opportunity and tremendous responsibility to take care of. And so for me, it was just, I want to get some help on this. I want to take everything in my brain and have somebody help me just process it and get some clarity on it. And because I just thought my responsibility to the command was so great that I owed it to myself and to them to do that. And so I hired a coach to help me with my blueprint. And so it was tremendously helpful. I still work with the same coach, but that coach was very helpful for me to think through things and gain clarity so that I could lead from that place of true self. Some people call it authenticity, but it's just understanding who I was, because that's how I had to lead. You have to be yourself. When you're in a leadership position, I firmly believe that you have to be yourself. You have to lead from who you are. You can't try to be somebody you're not.
Right. I love your answer because to me, particularly being an enlisted guy, and I don't know how the relationship between officers and enlisted is. There's a lot of playfulness, but then there's also a lot of spite because officers tend to come in the Army, particularly in the infantry units, young lieutenants, and like, I got a degree, I outrank you, and throw their weight around. But hearing you talk about just hiring a coach to get better so that you could be the most effective leader, to me, speaks volumes about your character and about what type of leader you actually are. And so I really want to harp on the coach thing for a minute, because how did you arrive at the decision to hire a coach, first of all? And where did you go to seek out an actual coach? Because this is not something that's talked about basically ever in the military career, at least in my experience. Nobody ever came to me and was like, hey, you can do things to better yourself. And, one of those things could be hiring a coach in this area of your life. That's never been presented to me ever until I started getting into entrepreneurship. So can you talk a little bit about that process for you and how you arrived at the conclusion, like, a coach is what I need?
Yeah. I think that those of us, at least at the level I was at when I hired one, in the military, hiring a coach, at least I'll say the Navy, because I can't speak for the other services. I felt like a little bit of an outlier. I don't know any of my other peers at that time who talked about or hired a coach. Mentors, yep, we've all had mentors, and I have plenty of friends who have mentors. But actually, hiring a coach to help me with this, I didn't have any friends in the Navy, any peers who I knew of that had done that. Now, I'm not saying they're not out there. I just didn't know of them. None of my peers that I knew of were doing that. So a bit of an outlier, I would say. And here's where it's kind of the first time where I can't stress the benefit. I can't stress enough the benefits of actually having interest outside of whatever it is your primary role is. And this is where I had interest in real estate investing outside of the Navy. And so I had joined a real estate investing group. So that's one thing, this accountability group that we've met every Saturday morning for 4.5 years now. If you see me online anywhere in LinkedIn, you'll see that I've talked about Green Squad before. But so that's one area. And then the other area is I had always had an interest in kind of finance. And so I was playing around with like designing life insurance policies, et cetera, just on the side hobby at that point, nothing serious, certainly nothing that ever took away from the Navy. But because I was exploring some of these other interests, I was exposed to different perspectives. Like you just said, I was exposed to some entrepreneurial mindsets, the idea of coaches and the idea of having people to help hold you accountable, accelerating your growth. And so I was exposed to some of those ideas that I don't think we get exposed to during the normal course of things in the Navy. And I had a mentor, an outside of the Navy, a non-Navy mentor, And that mentor had hired a coach and referred me to the coach that I ended up hiring. And so that's how I found her and hired her.
I'm so glad that you pointed out kind of your recognition of what led to you hiring a coach, because you're absolutely right. And I can speak for the Army, you're speaking for the Navy. We're not presented with those opportunities. And it's not until I got into entrepreneurship that I started learning about coaches and all of this. So usually this is a part of the show that we talk about, and move into the transition. However, you're still active duty, you're still in the Navy. And I think it's probably a good time to transition over into entrepreneurship for you, because it's becoming very clear to me that you joined the real estate investors group. You've been in it for 4.5 years. You've got this interest in finance. It's giving you all of these perspectives. You're around these entrepreneurs. So was that the catalyst for you becoming an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think it was a mixture of things. I don't know if the theme has come up yet, but I just love learning. And so during my FRS, when I was an instructor pilot, I was going to school at that time to get an MBA. During my department head tour, I was doing some classes, actually the end of department head into the SOCOM time. I was taking some classes at the American College of Financial Services. Really, so the education was just kind of stoking my thoughts and ideas about things that I could potentially do. Because, like we talked about before, I'd screen for command, right? I'm thinking to myself, do I want to be a CO? Why is it that I want to be? We've already talked about all that. And so I started thinking about, well, what would it look like outside? And so those were kind of the seeds. And then the longer I've gone, that was back in 16 to 18, I guess. So then 18 to 19 is when I was back in the pipeline to be an XO. 19 to 21, I was XO. 21 to 22, I was CO. And so over those last 6-7 years, it is that seed has slowly grown into, I see a real path forward to kind of go the entrepreneurial route and try it on my own, because I want to be able to build something that I can align to my blueprint. So we've talked about blueprint a little bit. We've mentioned it. We've talked about my coach. And so what my coach helped me do, gaining that clarity on what's important to me, also helps me to, when I make major decisions, I can align them to try to ensure that I am always moving in the direction of harmony with the different parts of me and what I want to be doing. And that for me right now is leading me to entrepreneurship. And really the last year coaching and helping others kind of gain this clarity, the same thing my coach did for me. That really resonates with my blueprint and what really matters to me. I'll
I
pause
love
there.
that answer. Yeah, I love that answer, Brandon. And it's important because you started off the answer with, I don't know if this has come up yet, you said, but learning new things. That's been the entire theme of this entire show for you right now, is your desire and just your, I don't know, your compulsion to just always be learning new things. And I think that speaks volumes about entrepreneurship, particularly because I believe that the path back to purpose for veterans is entrepreneurship. I say it pretty much every show that I do, but you're pointing out things that kind of just confirm my philosophy, in that learning new things seems to be a theme for every veteran entrepreneur I've talked to. And learning new things, it's like, that's what entrepreneurship is. It's every single day. You're always learning something new. And the more I do this, the deeper I get into it, the more I am realizing I'm never going to run out of things to learn. There's always going to be more to learn, no matter if it's doing what you're doing with life insurance and coaching, or doing what I'm doing with the podcast and coaching, or if you want to run, I'm working with a guy I mentored in the Army. He's got a company that's selling tactical equipment. It's all you're always going to have something more to learn as you continue to grow. And so, that plays into this. Would you agree that that's really what's compels you to keep pursuing entrepreneurship?
Well, the growth mindset, believing that I can continue to learn and develop for the rest of my life, absolutely 100% plays a role in entrepreneurship. And like you said, there's something to learn every day. You're never going to know it all. And that's actually, humility and growth mindset are two of my core values that are just central to how I look at leadership, treating other people, treating to include myself, my family. Um, it's this idea that I don't have all the answers, right? I know what I know. I'm confident in my abilities. I'm confident in what I know, but I'm also confident that there's something that I could be missing. And so, what that mindset allows me to do is it allows me to listen to somebody else's perspective on something. It allows me to then step back and question, okay, that's different than my perspective. Maybe I need to dig into that a little more. Versus the mindset of some folks that I've run into and encountered in my life where it's your perspective's different than mine. I know that what I'm doing is right. So now I'm just going to discount your perspective. And what that does is it opens you up to just a whole bunch of blind spots. A whole bunch of blind spots that and because they're blind spots, you don't even know they're operating in the background there to derail whatever it is you're trying to do, or get you into trouble, whatever. So that is like the central theme of entrepreneurship, and to me, leader development. If you're not adopting that growth mindset and a little bit of humility, you're going to get into trouble.
I love it. I love that answer because, learning new things is the growth mindset, right? You're always learning. You're looking at things from other people's points of view, like really trying to put yourself in their shoes and understand what they're saying to you, and it opens up all of these new doors to you if you do approach it with that growth mindset. And so, how do you think, because you haven't transitioned, I do believe you're positioned really well already to not have such a rough transition, in the loss of purpose and the loss of identity, because you're actively doing the work. And by the work, I mean the personal development, the growth mindset, adaptation, all of that is really what it takes for most veterans who get out and experience that loss and fall down that dark hole. That's how you climb out of the dark hole. And so, do you feel like you've set yourself up for a smooth transition and that you will avoid a lot of those pitfalls?
Well, I'll tell you, I don't think it's going to be without its challenges, right? I believe it will still be challenging even for me. I mean, transitioning out of the military, I've been in for 21. It'll be 22 years when I retire. Um, that's a huge part of your life, right? It's a huge way that I've operated for 22 years. So it will not be without its challenges. I will not say that. However, I think the most important thing that somebody can do when they're making a huge transition like that is to go inward. And I don't mean shy away from help. I just mean look inward, do the tough inner work to discover, like, what is important to me? What are my core values, passions, purpose? What are all those things about me that make me unique and make me me? And that's who I am, right? Those parts of me make up me, not pilot, infantryman, intelligence, corpsman, whatever. Not my role in the military, not uh, naval officer, right? It's not your role that makes you who you are. It's you. It's your uniqueness. It's all of these things we've been talking about, right? That's what makes you unique. And so, if you don't do that work, it's just human nature. Like we've been doing something for 20 plus years, you get attached to that and it becomes your identity. So if you don't do the tough inner work to really uncover you, who you really are, and what makes you unique, then you're running the risk of being attached to this identity. And now you retire or you get out and you don't have that anymore. And so it just makes it doubly tough. I would think so. And so I do think in that area, I'm prepared. I'm prepared a little better than maybe some people are at this stage.
I love that answer because it is true. And so that really just kind of leads me into the next kind of segment here. And we talk about doing the work. And so I want to give an example. We talked before twice, and for a little bit before we started recording. And you had expressed to me that you hired a coach because you had internal limiting beliefs and fears, such as the fear of looking foolish in front of your superiors. So this is the kind of work that we talk about, right, when we're doing the work. So assessing why you have those internal limiting beliefs, what you're genuinely afraid of, and kind of, I think it was yesterday I commented on your post with a question is like, who is the person that I have to become to get through this, right? And so can you speak a little bit about that process and doing that work? Because this is the important stuff as I continue to do this and continue to reflect on the conversations that I'm having. I realize, we talk about doing the work, but let's actually talk about what the work looks like. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, this is great. So you mentioned, I'll just start with like not wanting to look dumb in front of superiors, right? That is a belief that starts with an assumption. Like if I assume that if I look dumb in front of superiors, then I'm not going to get the high marks that I need to continue to promote. Well, that's going to lead me to believe I can't look dumb in front of superiors, which will lead me to not speak up when I have maybe a differing perspective than my boss, or right, which will then hurt the team because I'm not now exposing what could potentially be a barrier or, trouble down the road. I'm not bringing that up because I don't want to look stupid in front of my boss, right? And so this is, I faced this fear in the past, but you could extrapolate that to many people could extrapolate that to their own circumstance. And so what it highlights is, okay, first of all, we might not even know that we are making that assumption. We're just not speaking up in the meeting, right? We're just not pointing out the bad thing coming down the road. And so if that's the case, we're just not speaking up, but we don't really know why we're not or what we're afraid of, then we're going to continue to do that. We're going to continue to act like that. So evoking awareness somehow of those beliefs is, to me, the crux, and why what you do as a coach and what I'm trying to do as a coach is so important. Because what we do as coaches is we help people see these things that I'm not telling you what to do. If you hire me as your coach, I'm not going to come in and tell you what to do. You're you in a unique circumstance with unique problems in a unique skill set that I don't have. So I'm actually not going to tell you what to do. What I'm trying to do is understand what your goals are, understand what you're currently doing, and help you evoke awareness as to why maybe you're not doing what you say you want to do, and instead you're doing this other stuff. And if I help you become aware of what your belief is about that, then now that you're aware of it, now you can make a decision about what to do with it. Okay. Now you can maybe go ask a mentor, hey, is this true? Have you seen this to be true in your career? And maybe they say yes, or maybe they say, no way. That's actually not how it's going to be. And then now you're like, oh, all this time I thought that you thought that I would look like an idiot if I didn't have the right answer. I didn't agree with you, like back to the boss example. Meanwhile, the whole time that's all you want me to do is highlight that stuff for you because you want to get your blind spots uncovered, right? So it's like, whoa, now I have a different way of looking at this and I have a different belief, a different mindset about it. Now maybe I'll behave differently. Now maybe I'll speak up in the meeting because I know how important it is that I do that.
I love that, man. And it's such a great nod to coaching, because I think coaching has a certain stigma around it. Like, people are like, well, what do I really need to hire a coach for? And kind of my approach to coaching is a lot like yours. I'm really just there to listen to you, ask you some tougher questions that make you look inward more, so that you can discover what your internal values and beliefs are. Because I find, even for myself, I didn't know who I was really. I let the Army decide for me who I was, and I just held on to that for so long without ever questioning it. And so I think our role as coaches is to really unlock who they are at the core of themselves, their true self, right? Not the self that has been built up by years and years and years of military experience and that fixed mindset that we keep talking about. And so I think it's cool that you kind of talk about that, because I do feel like there's a stigma around hiring a coach. Like, maybe, an example of that would be in the infantry. You don't go get help. You don't go talk to somebody about your problems, because it makes you look weak and it can end your career, right? And I think people might think that about a coach, right? Like, well, I need a coach so that I can figure some shit out, and that makes me weak. And that's absolutely not the case. That actually shows how strong you actually are, because you're willing to go be vulnerable and be like, hey, I need some help so I can figure this out and be a better person. Do you see it the same way?
100%. 100%. I think that asking for help is one of the most courageous things you can do, because it requires that you do a couple things. It requires you're vulnerable and admit that you don't have all the answers and that you need help. And then it requires you to actually reach out and ask somebody. So that in and of itself can be courageous. And so reaching out for help, no matter what, like you want to reach out to a therapist because you need some help, like dealing with some trauma, yeah, do it. It's courageous to do that. It's courageous to put yourself out there and ask for that help. You have some goals, some developmental goals, growth goals, and you want to hire a coach, do it. Ask for the help. Reach out, because that's a courageous act, and it will not only will it help you, but it will serve as an example for the people on your team that it's okay to do that. In fact, it's not only okay, it's courageous, and I should do that, rather than bottling all this up and trying to keep it to yourself. Which can be extremely dangerous the more serious the problem is. But even we're not talking about problems, we're talking about coaching, right? With the unlocking potential. It's If you bottle it up and you don't do that, you are now not realizing all of your potential and not being able to raise your team the way you need to, because you weren't courageous enough to step forward and do it for yourself. And if you're the leader and you did that, you didn't set the example for your teammates to do it. And so now they don't know how courageous of an act it is. And now they're potentially missing out, and their teams are going to miss out.
Yeah, that's such a great answer. And I think, the two things that you pointed out, the vulnerability and the courage that it takes. I think the catalyst that starts that change when you do hire a coach, or if you come and hire me to coach you, the first thing you're going to find is I'm going to force you to be honest with yourself. And I think being honest with yourself, changing your internal monologue, that's the very first thing you have to do, because lying to yourself keeps you in that spot. And I'm curious, do you find that's true when you're doing your coaching sessions with your clients?
Yeah. We spend some time with my clients. We spend the discovery call and the first meeting. We are setting the environment. We are going over some ground rules that we both, if it's one-on-one, that we both need, and if it's a group, that the group needs to be able to be vulnerable, open up, and be honest with ourselves and each other. If we can't establish that environment, and by the way, this is one of a leader's, in my opinion, it's not just a coach, it's a leader's responsibility to foster the right environment for this stuff to be happening. Like if the leader's not doing it, especially in the military, if the leader's not doing it, you're then the other people on the team are likely not going to do it. It's modeling behavior. So setting the environment for our first session is like what it's all about. We don't get into any of the research or any of the other stuff that we're trying to do with coaching, except setting that environment and understanding the rules that we need to operate by, right? Confidentiality, being honest, um, challenging each other. If as a coach I read back something you said and it's wrong, you need to challenge me on that. And same thing, if you're the client and you say you want to do something but you're not doing it, I'm going to make you aware of that. But we have to have an environment where we trust each other. And if so, that's why setting the environment is so important in coaching and in leadership.
Absolutely. Totally agree. And so would you say that your decision to hire the coach before you took command inspired your decision to start your coaching business because of all of the work that you were able to do on yourself and all of the value you got in it? And if so, talk about your coaching business. Let's just dive right into your coaching business. How did you decide you were going to set it up? How did you come up with your coaching program? Kind of all the details there.
So hiring my coach led to uncovering my blueprint, which again, core values, skills, passions, purpose, and cause, which led to my ability to begin to make decisions in my life that align to that, to keep me in that direction that I want to be going, which leads back to, okay, I think I want to start coaching because coaching enables me to be aligned with my blueprint. It enables me, so very core to who I am is to look for growth opportunities in myself and my teammates so that we can uncover the best version of ourselves. And then we can all go out to the other teams that we're part of and help those teams do the same thing. So we have this chain reaction. That's very core to who I am. And it's been that way since I uncovered my blueprint, right, 3.5, 4 years ago. And so knowing that, this past year, I just started accepting coaching clients last summer. So maybe 10 months ago, 9 or 10 months ago. And I arrived at that point based off of my blueprint. And I don't know that I would have had I not taken the steps to hire a coach. And even if you don't hire a coach, right, just taking the steps to understand what really matters to me and then aligning decisions to that. That's how I ended up as a student at the War College. That's how I ended up staying and being a professor of leader development. All of those things line up with who I am, line up with my blueprint. And so I made decisions to try to get into those positions. It wasn't guaranteed. I had to work with my detailer. And so I'm grateful that I'm here. But I wanted these orders and I wanted to be where I'm at because it aligns with my blueprint. Not because, oh, that's the next step that'll set me up for promotion or anything like that. No, because it aligns with my blueprint. And so then deciding to be a coach is one more thing, one more decision I've made to align with my blueprint.
That's so great, man. So we've danced around it enough, I think. You've talked about the golden path fallacy and you keep mentioning a blueprint. So let's dive into that. Let's talk about your beliefs on the golden path fallacy. Let's talk about what the blueprint is. I believe that's your method of coaching, correct? You use that with your clients as well, right?
Yeah. So my coach, it's her blueprint process. So I did not create the blueprint process, but I help others now uncover their blueprint. So to answer that question first, and we'll get into a little bit more detail about what that might entail. But I wanted to start with that. And then the golden path fallacy. Yeah. The golden path fallacy is, I just started talking about it like this. So I'm leader development. I facilitate leader development at the War College, and we talk about heuristics and biases and fallacies all the time. These things that we're subject to and that we need to be aware of because they can get you into trouble if you're not aware of them. And so the golden path fallacy is something that I've started to talk about, this idea that there's a golden path that society or others, mentor, whoever it is, kind of lays out. And we think that we need to follow the same path in order to X, achieve X, right? Arrive, get to the top of your career field, or investing, how I'm supposed to be a parent. Like the idea that it's out there, there's this golden path, and all we need to do is just follow it. It's already been laid before us. Okay. And I think that's a fallacy, because that assumes that everybody could take the same path and arrive at these same results. And if you believe that, then you just kind of take away this idea that we're unique and that we have unique skill sets, and that we're meant to kind of find that uniqueness, find that best version, and put it out there, because that's what the world needs. They don't need everybody to be exactly the same. But if you believe that the path laid out is the one you have to follow, because that's what everybody does to be successful by societal standards, well, then why would you believe that you're unique and you have unique gifts and you have unique abilities, and that you have a purpose other than just to follow what everyone else is doing? So that's why I think it's a fallacy, because I just believe that the true golden path for me is the one that you carve for yourself, based off of this self-awareness of what really matters to you, what you really want to be doing, what you're meant to be doing. And okay, so when you're carving a path because of that, that's a golden path, but you're carving that based on you and your uniqueness. And so it's just a fallacy to me to think that there's just one path in whatever career you're in, and whatever investing and family and your career path, whatever it is, there's one path you follow to success. That's a fallacy to me. So that's what the golden path fallacy is.
Yeah, and it's almost like the group think mentality, right? Like everybody else is doing it, so I just have to do it too, which leaves no room, like you said, to be who your true self actually is. And what we're finding out, and what we I think know, is in life there's a million and one ways to do the same thing that everybody else is doing, and no one way is the right way. I think that there are fundamental things that are right that you have to have in place in order to accomplish anything, but the rest of it is, like you said, up to you to carve your own path. So let's talk about your blueprint, and let's go into detail about it, because I think this can open the door for so many people to get better, and I can't think of a better person to explain that on the show. So take it away, and let's go deep into the blueprint.
Yeah. So the question then becomes, well, how do you counter this golden path fallacy? How do you get out of it? And we've mentioned it before already. It's awareness. It is, well, first, actually, it's like humility and the growth mindset. It's like believing that you don't have all the answers already, and that there may be another way. There may be another way to approach this. And so once you have that belief, now you're open to actually, all right, well, then if there is another way, now I can look for it. I believe it, so now I can look for it. And most importantly, like, start with yourself and look inward. And so that's where then blueprint process comes in, and it's a one-on-one process. I am actually thinking about creating a group experience with it, but I don't have that yet. So it's a one-on-one process, and we work together. It's about 4 to 6 months. It depends on who the client is and where they want to take the sessions. But it's a process of me listening to you as you're talking about the decisions you're making, what your hopes and dreams are, what your ideal life might look like. And we're having these discussions, and I'm listening, actively listening. And then I'm asking you questions to just help you become aware of these different parts of you that are so important. And as you then become aware of those, and I'm listening, my role, other than evoking the awareness and helping you as your coach, is I'm also now I'm recording these. And so, for example, like this is this back here behind me, I've got my blueprint on the wall back here, right? So I'm recording all of this. And then there's a period before it goes to print where now we look at it together, and you're looking at it, and you're seeing what I've captured, and you're looking at it, and if it doesn't resonate with you, we talk about it. Okay, maybe I had a bias when I wrote that down. So I've built into the process a way to eliminate my biases because I'm a human. So I'm listening and I'm trying to record what you're saying, and I'm trying to capture you and your blueprint, but it's being filtered through a human mind, my human mind. And so I could have some biases. And so before we go to print, we go back through it, and it's got to resonate with you. And if you're like, I don't know why that's there, I don't agree, then then it goes away, and we talk about it some, right? And all this, by the way, I make very, very clear up front. Yeah, go ahead. Okay. Yeah. So at the beginning of the process, I make it very clear, right? I'm not here to give you advice. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm not here to relate to you because you're unique, you're you. I'm here to listen and ask questions to help you become aware of this stuff, of what's most important to you. And then, and I tell you up front, we're going to build this in to where you're going to help me make sure that my biases aren't in your blueprint. And that's all part of the process, right? And so then we go to print, and then once we go to print, now we've captured all this stuff, right? All these things, these passions, values, skills that are so important to you. And then we go through a filtering process where we, at this time of your life, the environments you're in and the people that you're meant to serve, meant to help, what from your blueprint now we filter it down, and what emerges is like at this time of your life, what is really resonating and most core to you from your blueprint, and we filter that down, and then we talk about, okay, now how do we start to use that? How do we start to make decisions that can keep you in alignment with what is truly most important to you?
So great, man. So in sitting down and listening, actively listening to your clients, give some examples of the type of questions. I know they're all open-ended questions because you're forcing your client to think critically, but what are some questions, maybe two or three of the most powerful questions that you ask that kind of unlock a lot of this stuff for people?
Yeah. So, man, that's a great question. Speaking of great questions, each session, I like to start off with either something to the effect of, "Hey, what's bubbling up for you right now?" Or what's energizing or de-energizing you right now. And right now being, we probably have met the week prior, because the sessions while you're going through the process, we try to meet once a week. And so what's bubbling up for you this week? What's energizing you? What's de-energizing for you? And I ask that because I want to know what's on your mind. What's on your mind is another question I may ask, because I want to start the session off with what is on your mind. What are you most recently doing, and why are you doing it? Essentially, is what we're getting at. Like, what are you spending your time doing, and why? And so that's like the first place I want to evoke awareness, because what you're doing consistently, you need to be aware of why you're doing that. And so that enables us to help uncover what's important about that to you. Or if it's de-energizing, what is that attacking? Like, what's in conflict about what you're doing and what you want to be doing? And we pull that thread. And so that's probably my favorite way to start the conversation each week, is just with that. And sometimes our whole 45-minute to an hour session will just be based off of what you started with, off of that first question, because it's like that important to you. And then we start threading from there into potentially maybe some other paths.
Oh man, that's so great. And I like that you're asking, what are you currently doing? What are you currently thinking? Because in a way that forces them to step outside of what they know as their reality and take a hard look at their actions and behaviors. And I think, I know for me, it was true. I was aware that I was, being a couch potato and doom scrolling and just really just a nihilist about everything. But until I had to step outside of myself and someone forced me to say out loud what I'm doing, and I hear these things that I'm doing, and it just made me feel disgusting. Like I'm better than this, kind of, right? And would you agree that that's kind of what the purpose of that question is to really force them to look at themselves from a different perspective?
It can do that for sure. That resonates with me, Adam. And another major purpose of that question is, and I say this at the beginning of the process, right? I'm not telling you what to do or giving you advice. I'm helping you uncover what's already there. So chances are, if you're doing something that's energizing for you, well, it's because that it's resonating with your blueprint. And so I want to know how you're spending your time, because chances are I'm going to help you become aware of what is really resonating with you about what you're doing. You move, so you kind of chunk down a little bit. You move from, oh, this was energizing, it felt great. Well, it's kind of hard to do anything with that. Great can mean a million different things to different people. So, oh, it was really, I loved it. Okay. What about that did you love the most? Right. And so we start to chunk down until we get to, oh, it's because I was able to empower my teammate. I was able to convey a message to my teammate, and then they were empowered to go come up with their own solution. And man, I really just love being able to do that for my teammate. Well, you have just now become aware of how important it is for you to be in positions where you can empower people, right? Where you can empower your teammate. So that's kind of the purpose, the overarching purpose, in addition to what you said
Yeah.
of the questions.
Yeah. And I like that answer because your guiding values are vision, empowerment, resilience, humility, team, alignment, life authorship, growth mindset, and focusing on growth opportunities for the self and for your teammates. And I love all those values, particularly because at least for me, when I was forced to take a look at the behaviors and the thoughts and, change my internal monologue, what I discovered was, as I start doing the work on myself, I naturally want to share that with others. And naturally, it just starts to fall in line that the people around you take notice of what you're doing and saying, and then they start kind of adapting some of those practices or habits that you're now learning. And I don't know, it just feels good because you make people around you better instead of, the opposite. I think, when I was in the dark hole and out of balance and not self-aware enough to realize, that there are tools that can help me get out of this, it was destroying my personal relationships, whether I cared to admit it or not. It was destroying, my family relationships, 2 marriages, everything else. Right. And so I think it's awesome to call attention to that, and then tell everybody what you get out of it, because I think it's important to understand that living a life as a servant leader or a life of service to others, which is what entrepreneurship is. If you're a kind person, business doesn't have to be cutthroat and greedy. There's plenty to go around, and we can all help each other get to where we want to go. But talk about what that does for you and your soul, or your core values, and how that aligns with your blueprint.
Man, it's energizing. So back to one of my favorite questions. What's energizing you? Coaching and helping someone the way I've just described it, it ticks. And then you brought up my core values, core principles there: life authorship, growth mindset, humility, team, vision, empowerment, helping people see growth opportunities in themselves, right? So that they uncover the best version of themselves. That's all in my blueprint tower. And so when I'm coaching, I am like in the zone, hitting all of those things. So what does that do for me? I mean, it lights my blueprint up. It energizes me, and I feel fulfilled. I am fulfilling my purpose. And like, there's nothing better than that for somebody. I don't think. Like, if you're spending the time in fulfilling your purpose and being lit up like that, what else do you need? You know?
Yeah, I totally agree with that, man. And it's a very similar. I don't have any paid coaching clients to this point. I'm actually not concerned with making money or anything at this point. I'm concerned with providing value to people and helping them spread the word, right? Like that's the whole point of this show. But what this show does for me, I was excited. I was up at 6 o'clock this morning, like I always am on a Saturday when I could have slept in. I was excited to sit down and have this conversation with you, Brandon. And I get to go do another one as soon as we're done with this one. And so my whole Saturday looks like, recording other veteran entrepreneurs who have been through the shit that we've been through, or are currently going through the shit that we all go through with the transition and everything else. And so I totally agree. Like it energizes me. And I didn't do a blueprint. I was kind of different. The mentor that I have, Kobe Wecker, he invited me into his community, and his very first thing was the ikigai, right? So the old Japanese thing, which basically means find your purpose, 3 concentric circles, all of your interests and hobbies and values, whatever's in the middle, that's kind of like what your blueprint is. And I'm following, my ikigai or whatever, and it's been amazing, man. It's so rewarding. We talked before we started recording. I got a comment from a command sergeant major who's got like 27 years in the Army. It was just so humbling because he saw my content, resonated with him, and immediately said, "I'm going to jump into the podcast right now." And that just tells me that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing to achieve what I thought that this could achieve. And there really is no better feeling than that. Would you agree?
100%, man. And it's funny you mentioned Ikigai. I had never heard of that until, I don't know if it was actually on LinkedIn. It might have been you who commented on something and asked if I had heard of that. But then definitely another connection on LinkedIn brought it up and post. And so I saw that the picture of it in the concentric circles. I saw that yesterday for the first time, actually. So it's pretty cool that you're bringing that up. But 100%,
Yeah,
I
man.
agree with
And
you.
it did.
There's
It was an exercise that I went through as soon as I met Colby. I started my journey on LinkedIn. It was a challenge from one of my very best friends in the world. He's an SDR. He's gotten really great sales development representative roles in from building an audience on LinkedIn, like very lucrative for him. And he's just a sales guy. That's what he wants to do. So he challenged me. He's like, start posting every single day on LinkedIn and go engage with at least 5 people. And so I didn't even know what to post about. I didn't know what I was into. And the result of that was, Colby reached out to me in the DMs and was like, "Hey man, like I think you're a cool guy. I'm a cool guy. Let's have a conversation. Let's connect a little further." And that turned into an invite for me paying like, I don't know, like $100 for the year to be in his community. And man, the things that I started learning in there, because the first thing I did when I got in there was do the ikigai. Like I sat down and I had to do the work again, right? Like filling out an ikigai forces you to critically think about your vision, your resiliency, your humility, your growth mindset. Like it really forces all of those things and then informs what you should be kind of trying to build. And, I think your blueprint is just another version of the ikigai, and I'm sure other coaches out there in the coaching space have different names for probably some very similar processes. Do you see it that way as well?
Yeah, I do. I like the Ikigai is a great example of, getting to the core of who you are and what matters most to you. Like whatever resonates for you, and anybody listening, whatever resonates with you as a way to do that, get to the core of what matters most to you, then it's probably worth exploring a little bit more and find what resonates with you. Blueprint won't resonate with everybody. Ikigai might not, but find what does, that helps you extract your best self and follow that.
For sure. And I think that proves your point that the golden path is a fallacy, because here's two examples, right? I did the Ikigai route, you're doing the blueprint route, right? And they're not the same thing, but they kind of are the same thing. The end result is the same. And then here we are having this conversation, both building something very meaningful to our missions and very much in alignment with each other's missions, which I think is really one of the best parts about being an entrepreneur and doing the kind of work that we're doing. And so I want to kind of move into, you're also you have tier one insurance, correct? Is that what the name of the insurance company or your agency is?
Yep, I have tier one life insurance, tier one coaching, and tier one life insurance.
So was it your interest in finance that got you into life insurance? And we may spend a little bit of time on this because I'm curious to know your thoughts and your perception of life insurance. And then I'm going to share with you my experiences and perceptions of life insurance. And I'm almost willing to bet that they're very, very different.
Yeah. So I had an interest in finance. I've had an interest in finance for a long time. And so I started taking some classes. Actually, my wife was like, have you ever considered after the military being a financial advisor? And I was like, yeah, I guess I have kind of thought about that. So I started taking some classes at the American College of Financial Services. Um, and I got my chartered financial consultant and my chartered life underwriter designations from that. So yeah, interested in finance. What led me to life insurance really is, uh, and it's here's the connection, right? Golden path fallacy applies to everything. It applies to finance. It applies to how we invest. And I would say that a golden path fallacy is, and it's a fallacy again because there's a million ways to do it. You don't have to follow one path. But the path I was on was maxing out Roth IRA, contributing to my TSP, just like dollar cost average, right? Just every month out of the paycheck, something's going in there. And then my wife and I wanted to buy an investment property, real estate. This is actually when I was starting to get, love investing in real estate. And we realized that we didn't have any money for a down payment. And my wife was, and this at a time when I was like, you got to have 25% down. I just didn't know anything about it really, except that. And she's like, I thought you were saving and investing. And I said, I am, but it's all locked up in accounts until I'm 60. And at this
Right.
time I was like
59 and a
30.
half. Can't touch it. And you're going to pay taxes on
Yeah,
it.
right.
And
59
yeah.
and a half.
Yeah.
Um, and you just have this realization like, well, there's a lot of life to live before I'm 60. And don't get me wrong, I have a long-term view and I can delay gratification, but 30 years of not kind of pursuing some of these passions and these things I wanted to do, like owning some more real estate, was like, oh, I got to find a different way. And so then I actually read at the behest of a friend of mine, he gave me a copy of Becoming Your Own Banker by Nelson Nash. And we don't have to get into it on the podcast, but basically that book, it allowed me to see whole life insurance in a different light than I had previously looked at it. And I could see different uses for it and different values for having it in my life, my personal financial life. I could see different value there than I had before. And it really aligned with kind of my ideas about personal finance, which essentially boils down to you've got to figure out a way to protect what you earn. And at the same time, you have to figure out a way to finance your life, whether it's cash, bank loans, insurance policy loans, whatever the method that you're going to finance your life. You just got to solve for that and figure that out. And so that's like those core things. If you have those two things, and this is my personal opinion, if you have those two things established in your financial life, it's like a really strong foundation that will make you more resilient to the unexpected stuff that's going to happen to you in life financially. and not financially. So that's kind of the crux of why I got into life insurance the way that I did. And that's kind of the two core beliefs I have: protecting what you earn, providing that alternative source of financing in your life, and resilience. That's sums it up.
That's such a better experience with insurance than what I have. I started my insurance career knocking doors, selling final expense to the poorest one third of the Southeast, and it was horrible. I felt scummy. I felt dirty. People can't even afford to live in their homes, and I'm asking them to spend $170 a month on a premium just so that I can get 9 months commission. And I did learn in the industry, and I just got so jaded with the industry and the scummy sales tactics and all of that. And I'm not speaking for the entirety of the industry, because I have since, I've read Becoming Your Own Banker. I'm fascinated with infinite banking and IULs and how all that gets set up, and I don't know nearly enough about it, which is why it's cool to know somebody who's in that space, because I have the opinion that America doesn't do enough to educate us fiscally. I was well into my 30s before I learned how money actually works. And, I was also deployed every other year. So wasn't really thinking about putting money away or anything like that. Didn't know anything about the taxable bucket, the tax deferred bucket, and the zero tax bucket, and how you can play all of that to your benefit. Didn't know anything about real estate investing or how to leverage debt to acquire more assets. And so I think it's awesome, the work that you're doing. And my next question for you is there a future where tier one insurance and your tier one coaching kind of merge and you add a financial aspect to that?
That's a great question. I like having them separate, and I'll tell you, it's because what I help people do with life insurance, it isn't for everybody. Much like there's a golden path fallacy that we've been talking about. Well, it's also a fallacy to think that everybody should read Becoming Your Own Banker and set up their whole life policies and have their own banking system. That's also a fallacy that everybody should do that, in my opinion. And it's a fallacy because we're all unique. We all have different desires, and it's what works for one person is not going to work for the other. And so I want to keep them separate, because while they may not be ready or the right fit for how I can help them with life insurance, they may be very interested in uncovering their blueprint. And so they're completely separate. They're two separate businesses. Blueprint coaching has nothing to do with financial anything. I mean, obviously, the more self-aware you are and the more you have a blueprint, like, you will align financial decisions with that, but it's completely separate, right? And I kind of want to keep them that way so that I can, when I'm coaching, we're focusing on coaching. We're focusing on you, and I'm focused on helping you uncover what you need to uncover about yourself. And if we hit you have a financial challenge, then I want to be able to just coach you and help you uncover the best way for you to move forward, whatever that is. And then the life insurance then is a separate business, where if somebody comes to me and they uniquely want help setting that up, then I can help them set that up.
And so you do consult with, I mean, have you had any of your actual coaching clients come over to the financial side and be like, well, this guy improved my life with a blueprint over here. Maybe I should listen to what he has to say about the financial piece of it. And are you open to, if I wanted to come to you and learn more about this and find out if it's a good fit, do you do discovery calls for that? Do you take the time to kind of coach a little bit and inform?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, actually, the answer is no. None of my coaching clients have also then become financial clients. No, the answer to that is no. But the answer to your second part is yes. If somebody's interested in that route financially, so either route, there's a path for a discovery call. For coaching, it's an application. You fill out the application right on my website, and then we have a 30-minute discovery call free of charge. For the life insurance piece, You reach out and schedule something on my Calendly, and it's a 30-minute discovery call free of charge.
And what should people expect if they're wanting to sign up for, the insurance piece, interested in banking? Like, what are some just minimum expectations that they should be prepared for when setting something like this up? Is there like a minimum amount of money that they should be thinking about having saved up? Because it requires buying whole life policies, right? And I think the way I understand it is you draw against the cash value of the policy, but in order to have cash value, you have to have a paid up policy. So I may be off. I've been out of the industry for a little bit, and I didn't get super deep into the weeds. At one point, I was studying for Series 6 and 63, but that's a story for another time. So I just want to kind of set the expectation for the listeners, because I really do want them to look at you as a resource and start preparing now. Like, hey, I remember listening to the Strategic Veteran with Brandon Jenkins, and I remember he talked about some kind of be your own bank type of thing, but I didn't meet kind of the requirements then, but I was diligent enough to be interested. So I want to meet these requirements. So, kind of who is this for really? Because you said it's not for everybody.
Yeah, it's not for everybody. And the number one thing I think that you need to have before you go down this path is the mindset. It is the mindset that there could be a different way to do things, and the mindset of, I want this in my life for the protective benefits, for the alternative financing. It's not an investment. It's not a replacement for investments. It is supplemental. It's kind of there's a book out there. It's called The And Asset. I haven't read the book, so I can't vouch for the book. But I like using that and asset term. I forget who wrote that. So I'm definitely not taking credit for that. But I like the way that is, because it's a mindset of, hey, this is a foundational piece of my strategy. This is the role it serves: protection of my capital and death benefit protection. And it serves as a place where I can get alternative financing when I want to, if I choose to. And that's really it.
It's almost just another tool in your tool belt for building wealth and getting to that point in life that we're all trying to get to, right? That time and financial freedom. It's just another tool. It doesn't replace anything. It just adds to, right? Supplements, like you said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's not an investment. First off, it's whole life insurance. It's not IULs. Not for what I help clients do. Not for banking purposes. IULs just don't have the guarantees in place. Whole life has the guarantees in place, in the contract in place with those guarantees. IULs have contracts, but the whole life contract, it puts in place guarantees for life, right? You pay your premiums. This policy is going to be enforced for life. Premiums are level forever. The base anyway. And so then it can become a foundational asset that you can count on to be there when you need it. It is, and that's what it is. It's another tool. Like you said, it's another tool. It's not an investment. Like, if you get a whole life policy and you just start pouring all your cash into it and don't ever do anything else, well, that's not an investment. I mean, you're not investing. You're just paying life insurance premiums, and you're building cash value, but you're not building it not at investment rates, like super conservative. We're talking about maybe 3 to 4% after tax over a lifetime. Maybe a little bit higher than that if it's designed properly, but that's not investment returns. That's like, that'll protect you from inflation, but it guarantees the money's there. It protects it, and it supports a much higher death benefit. And here's the thing, you can use it as an alternative source of financing, which leads me to like the number two
I think
thing.
that's probably like a really good primary use of it, right, is the alternative financing, because now you're borrowing money from yourself and paying yourself back instead of borrowing money from a bank and paying them interest on the money and essentially paying more for the loan. You're just paying a level fee for the loan to yourself.
Well, what you're doing is allowing your capital to stay in an account in the life insurance policy and grow untouched, and using the cash value as collateral to back a loan, usually from the life insurance company, that then you can take those loan proceeds and do what you need to do with it. So you're not borrowing from yourself. So some misnomers that are just rampant out there, which is why people need to be really careful before they do this and why it's not for everybody. You're not borrowing from yourself. You're borrowing from the life insurance company. And in fact, some people use their policy as collateral and they'll still borrow from a bank. Now they're not infinite banking purists, because infinite banking purists would say you're trying to get rid of the banks out of your life for good. But essentially, the policy, the cash value is collateral. You're getting a loan from the life insurance company, and that loan actually does have an interest component. And that interest component actually does go back to the life insurance company. And so the idea that you're borrowing from yourself and paying yourself interest, it's not true. What's true is you have built up cash value, you're borrowing against it. So the cash value is still growing. It's still earning interest. It's still earning dividends. All right. Versus if you withdrew it from your savings account, it wouldn't be earning any interest, right? Not that it earns much interest anyway in a savings account, but so your capital is still eligible to earn and it's still compounding. And so then the interest rate you're paying the insurance company is what it is, but the effect of it, the reason people say that you're paying interest back to yourself is like the effect of that. The fact that you have your money working in this account and it's earning while you're borrowing against it and using the value for something else. And so the rate that you're earning on your cash value somehow negates they complicate it, right? They
Well,
complicate
and I'm
it.
glad you're pointing this out, because I worked in the industry for 3 years and was learning how to actually, someday sell this to people. And I got it wrong. You just corrected me and educated me. So I appreciate that. And it's important to have these conversations, because I'm willing to bet 90% of our audience here doesn't know about these as options. And I'm glad you're willing to talk about it and set the record straight, right? Like showing that this is bullshit over here. You're not borrowing from yourself. You're borrowing from the insurance company. And what is actually happening is that money that you're borrowing never really leaves anywhere. You still make these premium and interest payments, but your capital is still growing over here and compounding. And that's the power of it, correct?
Yes, your capital remains untouched. It's like I don't know if you've ever heard the compound. Someone explained compounding, and they're like, if I give you a penny a day, right, and we double that every day, by the end of a month, you're a millionaire. You know, yeah, right. Like, and so that's true compounding, because then that penny is always doubling and your money then is always doubling. And so versus like stock market, it's not true compounding. It's really a combination of you get paid the dividends and you reinvest it, and capital appreciation, like the value of your stock goes up. But that's not the same thing as compounding. And that's another like smoke and mirror thing in the industry, is like they'll put it in the calculator as if it's just pure compounding, and it's not. But in a life insurance policy, it is. Like your money is in the policy and it's growing and it's guaranteed to never go below. Like once the cash value is established in a whole life policy, there are guarantees in place that it's not going to go down unless you do something to make it go down, like you withdraw, partial surrenders, things like that. So it is always there, guaranteed at a level, and always earning interest. Guaranteed interest is built into a whole life contract. So it is actually pure compounding for life if you have the policy for life. And the power is you can leverage it with a loan against it while it's still growing. It's a lot like a home equity line. You take a home equity line of credit out against your house, you're not withdrawing any equity out of the house. It sounds kind of ridiculous when you put it that way. Like, of course, I'm not withdrawing money out of the walls of my house. No, the house is serving as collateral for a loan from a bank. So then you get the loan for the against the amount of equity. So in a whole life policy, you get a loan from the life insurance company against the value of the cash value.
Nice. Yeah, absolutely. And I just learned about the HELOCs from Myron Golden the other day. I was listening to him talk about taking a home equity line of credit out on your house, taking all of your earned income and putting it in that home equity line of credit, paying all of your bills out of that home equity line of credit, and now you can pay your house off like in 13 years if you want to. It's insane to learn how all this stuff works. I am by no means an expert. I have a lot more to learn about this, and I'm grateful to have conversations with people who are, I don't know, kind of geek out over this. Not throwing shade at you, but it sounds like you really kind of geek out over this stuff. Whereas I never really have. Like, money was never, we grew up very poor. My dad at one point was working 3 jobs. My mom's always been a part-time, whatever, just not really worked a bunch. But I didn't understand. Like, I just knew we didn't have it. You know what I mean? Nobody ever taught me how to make it or how to save it. Like, it just wasn't a part of my upbringing. So it's always cool to have conversations with people who do geek out over it. However much I don't understand, I always pick up new things. And I think that's, again, going back to the theme of the show with you here, it's like the theme is learning new things, right? Like that growth mindset and like actively seeking stuff like that out. So I'm super grateful that you just explained all that to us. That being said, what are your aspirations for the life insurance business and the coaching business as you are nearing the end of your career? You retire in the next year, correct?
Yeah, I just submitted my request to retire the other day for July of 25. So that has not been approved yet. So we'll see. Um, but yeah, so aspirations, I'm focused on building the coaching business right now. I still do the life insurance. I still accept life insurance clients, but you just won't see me out there marketing that as much because I believe that I can help and serve more people and stay in line with my blueprint with the coaching. Just see a lot more potential there. So that's where I'm focusing. Still take life insurance clients, but you really, if somebody hears me on here and they want to reach out, that's fine. Referrals. I'm also on the infinitebanking.org practitioner finder. I'm an authorized practitioner. There's not a ton of us. So if you want to go that route, I do recommend going to the practitioner finder and looking for somebody. They would be more well-versed in what I just described. They should all understand that. They've been through some deeper level training on it. But my primary focus from a growth of the business perspective is with tier 1 coaching.
Awesome, man. Just helping as many people as you can improve themselves and their situations in life. I love that. What would your advice be to those veterans who are interested in the path back to purpose with entrepreneurship? What advice do you have for them when, thinking about starting a business or, already into a business and trying to grow it so that they can, really live a life that aligns with their core values after service and not be stuck in the corporate 9 to 5 and be miserable?
Well, I would say start with yourself. Start with the inner work. Start with trying to uncover what matters most to you. And if you need help, ask for the help. I can tell you that hiring a coach accelerated my ability to do that, to uncover those things. And by accelerating that, it accelerates your ability to begin aligning your decisions with it. And so you don't have to hire a coach. The advice is to just uncover this stuff, right? What's important to you. A coach may help you, but it could be a friend. It could be an accountability group. You could set up an accountability group where you just tell people what you're trying to do, what you're trying to uncover, and maybe they'll listen to some stories and help you see things that you were unaware of before. That could help you. But regardless, I recommend you start with yourself, uncovering those things, because then you may find that the business you were going to start actually doesn't really even align with what you really want to do. And so you pivot. But if you don't have the self-awareness, you might not pivot, and you might get into something else that you don't want to be into, or that you're not meant to be doing.
I love it, man. I think even more than that, by doing the work on yourself, it really just reveals which direction you're supposed to be going, and then it will set you up to have the discipline and the resiliency to not quit when it gets hard, because building a business is hard. It's probably the hardest thing I've ever done, but it's also the most rewarding and most fun for me as well. Every day is a new set of challenges. Every day I'm lost. Every day I'm overwhelmed with the amount of things that I need to get done in order to continue to grow my business. And so do you believe that by doing that work, it really does help set you up for success moving forward down the business path?
100%. Because if you do that work on yourself, you can then build the business around that, and you can infuse your core values into your business. And now it's at the very foundation of the business. And as the business grows, it begins to take on a life of and look like, right, you. And not that you want it to be you so much as it is exhibiting kind of what's important to you, these core values and passions and skills and your purpose. And as it grows, then now you can help more people, right, that you couldn't do by yourself. And if you never start there, if you don't start with yourself, your capacity to raise your team, to grow your business is lessened. You start with yourself, raise your team.
Oh man, that's such a great answer. Brandon, dude, thank you so much for spending the time with us today and sharing your insights and your values and telling your story. It's so important to get people like you on here to tell their stories, because I do think that this can be such a powerful thing for the community, and ultimately help stop my mission of picking up a phone to notifications of dead battle buddies that I've served with, because there is a way out and there is a way to get better. So tell everybody how they can connect with you, get in touch with you, find you, who are interested in what you've got going on, who think they might want to work with you.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. I really appreciate it. I post every day on LinkedIn, so you can find me on LinkedIn, Brandon L. Jenkins. I think it's Brandon L. Jenkins, but just go on LinkedIn and look for me. Uh, you'll find me on there. My headline starts off with 20 plus years of leading teams in the military. So I post every day there, so you can read more of kind of my thoughts on things. Tier1coaching.com is where you can go to learn a little bit more about Blueprint, if Blueprint's right for you, and coaching services right for you. And there's an application at the bottom of that webpage that you can fill out. And once you fill that out, it takes you to my Calendly, and you can book some time with me. And that's Tier 1 Coaching, all spelled out. So TIERONE coaching.com.
Awesome, Brandon. I really am grateful for you today. Thank you so much for being here. That's the show, ladies and gentlemen. Any final words for the veteran audience out there? Anything you want them to take away from this before we sign off?
I want them to take away the fact that what you're doing with Strategic Veteran, helping veterans kind of understand, right, that they can carve their own path. We've talked about it, that they don't have to follow the same route that everybody's telling them to follow, and that there's support out here, right? That you and people like you are out here trying to support them and help them to carve that path. And so I want to thank you, Adam, for having me on. It's been a pleasure. I was honored that you asked me to come on here. I really appreciate it, and I really love what you're doing, man. Keep it up. Thank you.
Oh man, it's giving me chills, man. I really appreciate the kind words. It means the world to me. I really do care about this community, and I kind of saw that, it's time to step up and be a leader again, and be that vulnerable leader that I may not have been when I was in my career. And I really, the culminating event for me was right before I took my trip to Peru. I lost another good friend, and I had lost like 4 that week. And my wife was working from home, and I like showed her the message. I was like, tell me this isn't happening again. And I lost control and I hit a door. I put my fist right through a door, scared my wife. And I kind of knew then that I needed to get off my ass and do something. Little did I know it would take another 6 months before I would actually take an action. But it really does mean the world to me. If you can't find Brandon on LinkedIn, look in my comments. He's usually in my comments and vice versa. I'm in his comments every day. I'm super grateful for you and all the information you shared. Everybody, please go like, rate, review, subscribe, share this with as many people as you possibly can. The goal is to get 1 million veterans to see this by the end of the year. And I know that with the community that we're building and the network that we can accomplish that. So I really do wish that everybody would go do that, not for personal reasons, but because I want to reach more veterans. So we'll catch you next week on the Strategic Veteran. Thanks, Brandon. That's our show, and I'm truly thankful you've joined us at the Strategic Veteran. If our conversation today sparked curiosity or if you're ready to elevate your game, I'm here to help. Visit thestrategicveteran.com for exclusive show notes and resources or to book a coaching session directly with me. Take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and share your review. Your support makes all the difference. For more insights and daily strategies, let's connect on LinkedIn and keep the conversation going. Remember, this isn't just a podcast, it's your strategic advantage in action. Until our next rendezvous, stay bold and continue the mission.